I will call this meeting to order under the resolution that was adopted at the May 18th meeting for virtual public meetings. We have two sets of minutes to deal with. The first one was a July 27th board meeting. If I can have a motion for accepting those minutes.
So moved.
Thank you, Jim. If everyone will say yay or nay, I think we can pass this thing. All in favor? All in favor?
Yay.
Yes.
Yay.
Yes.
Is there anyone who is opposed to this? Hi, Lisa. Nope. She just disappeared again. No, there she is. Hi, Lisa. Good. So the minutes of July 27th have been accepted. We now have minutes for the special meeting on July 31st. If I can have a motion on those minutes.
So moved.
Thanks.
So moved.
All in favor of accepting the minutes for the July 31st special meeting, please say aye.
Yes.
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 Is there anyone opposed? Thank you very much.
And I'm not voting because, this is Carla, I'm not voting because I wasn't part of the special meeting.
Thanks for reminding whoever is taking the minutes. Are there any announcements from board members?
This is not, I don't have an announcement in particular, but I did just want to extend another thank you to all the staff for continuing somewhat chaotic circumstances in some instances, and a lot of pressure on them. So I appreciate all the hard work they're doing and getting everything done.
I think the rest of the board would support that statement. Are there any public comments?
This is Sarah, and if you'd like to make a public comment, it's cursor at the bottom of the screen to click on Q&A. If you're on the phone, you'll dial #9. I don't see anything that has come in.
I don't either. We have 25 participants in this meeting, but I haven't seen anything come up. Thank you very much. We have deferred any trustee continuing education given the unusual circumstances of our meetings of late. But I have asked David to reinstate our continuing education going back to a presentation that was given to the VLA last year by some of the library children's staff about weeding the children's collection. I think it's going to be a very important thing for us to start thinking about again. On to new business. David will introduce where we are with our COVID-19 response plan.
Thank you, Marcy. So since the special session at the end of July, JMRL has increased hours at each location to 6 hours a day for curbside and drive-through pickup. This is going extremely well. We've had no reports of long wait times at Northside, which was a comment that most of us heard either directly from patrons or from officials who heard from patrons. So I'm very pleased with that. The new hours seem to be working. We do have evening Monday hours now. They're a little slow to, we've got users coming in between 5 and 7 on Mondays. It's not quite the same volume as we have during the day, but that's to be expected as we roll out new hours. Our downloadable circulation continues to be through the roof with 75% increase in usage over last year in April and May, and over 50% increase in June and July. So June and July last year was very heavy as well. It's coming down a little bit. Also seen an increase in Wi-Fi usage month over month from since April. Since July 1st, staff have hosted 82 virtual programs with over 1,600 attendees. So that's just since the beginning of July. It's not throughout the COVID response, but in the new fiscal year. So our services are very in demand, and staff have met that demand as well as they possibly can in a virtual environment. There are some services, of course, that are not being met because they require physical access to buildings. Largely, we're talking about computer and broadband access for job searching, for virtual schooling now, and for unemployment assistance. In the smaller jurisdictions, the library is the only option for some individuals to get that. As schools are starting to reopen, we're starting to hear some requests for having the library buildings open. So that's where we are right now in the response plan. As you recall, the board in their last month's meeting voted to accept JMRL's Tier 3 plan, which involves concierge service, as we would say, appointment service in each library for up to 5 people in an hour, then to be turned over every 45 minutes, basically, with cleaning to happen in between. So the board has approved that plan. We're still waiting on some timing decisions. I would be interested in having the board discuss an option to reopen local jurisdictions for appointment-only Tier 3 service in consultation with our local government partners. So we would begin talking to each of these locations to see where they are in their own response plan, where they are with their schools, whether or not the services that JMRL can offer there are going to be a benefit to their county, which we know they will be, but whether that's something they're looking for now. So Marcy, that's where we are. I'm happy to answer any questions about service since the last meeting or throughout the COVID-19 response.
Are there questions about the extended curbside hours? Has anyone had any comments that they need to convey to the board? Now, David has raised the possibility that, particularly with the outlying jurisdictions, the library begin exploring the possibility of opening on the concierge level at Tier 3 on a branch by branch basis. Shall I go around and ask for comments from all of the board members on this, or does anyone have any strong feelings that they would like to communicate to the board about the possibility of opening some of, particularly outlying jurisdictions?
Marcia, I could address some of those. I'm sorry, who am I interrupting?
Perhaps it'd be better if I just call people.
Yes.
Jim, I'm going to call on you again as you arrayed in my tiles on my desktop, so there won't be any particular order. Jim is the first one up.
I'm usually not first, but
no, I know. Lucky you.
Been a W all my life. Anyway, I've talked to a number of the offices here in the county. I've talked to the county. I've talked to the schools. I've talked to our library, and I think there's a positive thought about moving forward to the concierge level, but at the same time there's a lot of hesitation because of the opening of school on September 8th here. And I think that right now the overwhelming thought is we need to wait to see exactly what the opening of schools is going to do here in Green. I know our case numbers are relatively low, but the uptick that seems to be occurring across this country with every opening of schools, I looked at North Carolina and the North Carolina educational system and what they've done. And I think that even if we're positive, even if we're thinking positively about moving toward the concierge, right now we're not in a rush because we want to see exactly what the opening of school, what consequence that has. We know that the opening of schools is going to put more demands upon the library, not just from the high school, although obviously in that areas we're approaching this opening of schools with some caution. The primary and elementary will be full contact, and in the middle school and the high school will be a hybrid of sometimes live and most of the time virtual. But we want to see exactly what that's going to do. One of the things, one of the problems we have a community center. Community college right above us. And fortunately, they're going to do all virtual, so that should not be a problem. The students there, and a lot of our high school students were using the library quite a bit previously, but it's going to be virtual right now, so that should not be an issue. But yeah, we have a number of things going on.
I know you do also have other tenants in the building that house.
I didn't want to necessarily bring it up, but it's become quite a thorny issue We can't use their main entrance presently, and it looks like for the foreseeable future because of the other tenants in our building and their attitude or their needs. And so we're having to use a back door even to do what we're doing now. I think our staff is doing wonderfully. My wife had to go pick some things up the other day. She was overwhelmed with how positive the experience was. But I mean, we're using a back door even to get access. So if we were to have concierge, we'd have to have a hybrid schedule even. We'd have to have the students, the pickup would be for a certain period of time, then we'd have to close, then we'd have to open it for the hybrid to let the concierge come in, then we have to close and then open it up for more curbside service because we only have the one entrance.
David?
Can I ask that when board members speak, maybe state the jurisdiction or the branch that you're representing for the people that are going to be watching later. So Jim, thank you, from Greene County.
Yeah, I should have made that clear. This is in Greene County, and
I'll try to be good about that too.
yeah, I may have mentioned Greene because, but I should have stated it ahead of time. But that's sort of where we sit right now, I think, Marcia. And again, even though there's a positive attitude about we want to get services out there, we really do. But there's this hesitation because of the opening of schools right on us.
Has there been timing mentioned to you, Jim?
As far as when we could move toward concierge,
When you might be considering that?
you know, I think we'd have to give it a good couple of weeks to see what kind of consequence the opening of schools may cause. So I'm hesitant to put any time thing on this right now, but I'd say it'd have to be toward the end of September at the earliest, I would think.
Thank you.
Okay.
Lisa Wolfork is from Charlottesville, right?
Another W. Goodness, I'm like with Jim. I'm not used to being called on. I am, as representative of the Charlottesville division, I really do like Jim's point about coordinating what we do with the opening of schools. The city schools are going online only for the first 9 weeks. That's that's elementary all the way through high school. They are still in the process of developing a plan that for what the next, the school is made of 4 9-week sessions. The first will be all online. I don't know what the remaining 9 weeks, the remaining quarters will hold. But I also recognize that the needs of Charlottesville City are very different than the needs of Greene, the needs of Louisa. And so I'm very cautious and unwilling to open, but I also want to, I'm willing to defer and to listen to what the other districts in the region are saying as well. I think the decision that might be useful and reasonable for Charlottesville City might not be the same for Louisa. It might not be the same as what Nelson County might need. So I still hold very firm on my position about very, very limited contact. I am very concerned about what's going to happen in 2 weeks when UVA students come back. I'm starting my semester tomorrow teaching right here in this house for my first classes. And so I just want to be very cautious and transparent about my unwillingness to put library staff in jeopardy by being exposed to large numbers of people when I myself would not make that same choice. So I don't know, I guess I'm just kind of a floppy maybe, but I just want to be, I don't know, I just feel like the virus doesn't care what our plans are. So I just want to be really mindful that this is still real and it's still something that, we should be really cautious around.
Thank you, Lisa. Does anybody have any questions for Lisa? Mike Powers is from Albemarle.
Thanks. This is such a tricky balance that we have to strike because we know these services are important. At the same time, there's risks to staff and to the public. And there's also a lot of uncertainty. What does this, even just to characterize what the situation really is. I think if we asked all of us to characterize what we know, we'd get, 9 different answers just on this panel. I do think, I'm just speaking very generally, that the circumstances are different in, we have a region the size of the state of Delaware, is what we like to say. And so, yeah, I think even within Albemarle County, probably the circumstances are different at North Side, service region versus Crozet versus a Scottsville. So very generally speaking, I think it does make sense to kind of acknowledge that the circumstances are different. And so therefore the approach or, might be different. A different approach might be warranted in different locations because of different circumstances. So I would just make that general comment. David, I do have a question. What I heard was an idea that we would coordinate and sort of be guided more by the individual jurisdictions when we make some of these, case-by-case decisions potentially. And I'd like to understand a little bit better about what that would look like. Are you suggesting that we shift that decision case by case to some specific jurisdiction, points of contact? Yeah, I think I'm in agreement with the principle, but I'm not sure. I'm just indicating that I'm not clear on kind of the specifics of what this would look like.
I think it would mean talking to the administration of each jurisdiction to lay out our tier 3 plans. They've all been sent the plans and they've been publicly available, but really having a meeting to sit down and say, here's what the library's plan is for your building, because in every case it belongs to the jurisdiction there. So they do have some responsibility under the Department of Labor and Industry guidelines as the building owner there. So go through it with them, make sure that they are comfortable with the decision to open, make sure that there aren't any metrics that they're looking to meet before adding more services in the library, or conversely, hear if there are thoughts that they have that would adjust the plans per each jurisdiction. But largely speaking, it would be rolling out the tier 3 appointment service that we're talking about. So if a jurisdiction came back and said, well, actually, we just want to open, JMRL wouldn't jump to that. They would stick with the plan here. But it's more coordinating the timing of it and making sure that each jurisdiction, it's within their acceptable comfort level. As Jim said, if they have schools opening, then maybe they do or don't want, maybe they want the support for the schools right now by having the library open. Maybe they would rather wait until they get some more data. So all along in talking with the jurisdictions, most of our outlying jurisdictions have been prepared for the library to open, but this is a more specific conversation about the tier 3 plan that we'd be offering.
And would you envision this with supervisors or with county staff, or who would you start with? If you were, let's say Albemarle County, who would you approach first?
I would start with the Albemarle County executive.
Okay. And so I guess we'll hear what everyone else has to say, but would it make sense to say, if we're going to move forward with this sort of approach of getting jurisdictional feedback, that we conduct these meetings between now and our next meeting a month from now, and then a month from now we can convene and jurisdiction by jurisdiction report, hey, here's what the jurisdiction said. Would that be a good time frame, as far as us proceeding, or is it something you'd like to see happen sooner?
Well, in Louisa, they have been back at school since the week before last. Everybody's seen the news about cases in the schools there, that they've had, I think, 5 positive cases in the schools with teachers or students. Each of those came outside the school, and there was no transmission so far within the school. So I know that they are eager to give services in the county there. I have not had that specific conversation with the staff there concerning our tier 3 plan. So I would like to talk to them. I have a feeling that the answer in some places is going to be, sure, we would like that now. And if so, yeah, I'd like this board to discuss whether or not that's a possibility.
Okay, I'll step back for the next comments, but I guess my questions then would move to, if we're doing this, what would sort of be the timing? Would we establish today triggers, that if we authorize David, hey, if the jurisdiction says X, then David takes action Y, or do we need to, as a board, kind of consider, hey, get a report of what the jurisdiction said, and only then make a response?
I would hope that once we've gotten through the comments, that someone would be willing to make a motion, perhaps with some help from David.
Yeah.
Lisa, did you have something that you wanted to add?
I think I just wanted to ask David for a bit of clarification on the transmission rates from Louisa schools being open for a couple weeks. You're saying that they have had 5 cases, but they are not being transmitted through the schools. I guess I wasn't unsure. I wasn't understanding your assessment of that situation.
Yeah, and this I'm getting strictly from news reports. So from what the county schools, the Louisa County schools have been telling the news that they have had, I think, several teachers and several students that have positive tests. In each case, the individual who tested positive contracted the disease outside of school. You know, they didn't get the disease in school, and then there has been no transmission from those cases to anybody else at this point. The schools are only in session 2 days a week there. So kids are either on an A schedule or a B schedule. And then I think Fridays are all virtual. And about a fifth of their students are virtual learners. And Wendy can probably jump in and correct me if I'm wrong about any of the details. But my understanding from reports was that all the contact happened outside of school, and that the precautions the schools had in place prevented transmission to this point.
Marcia, I would say to address something.
Wait, Wendy. Jim, did you want
Yeah,
to?
what I was going to say is, as far as I understand what you're saying, Mike, and I agree with you, we need some sort of going forward steps. But I'd say if you were to talk to our county administrator tomorrow, you might get a totally different answer 2 weeks after school starts. So I understand as far as trying to place some sort of timeline on, but that's sort of iffy too.
Well, to be fair, I think all of us are going to have to be flexible no matter what we decide. This is not a situation that we're in control of,
No.
as has been pointed out by several people. Carla Mullen is also from Charlottesville. Carla, do you have comments?
Yeah, so I think everyone knows that I am in support of the appointment only services. And I think that, and I think that if there are localities that would like to move forward with that, then we should be prepared to do that over the next month or 2 months to put those services in place.
Thank you, Carla. Erica Younglove is from Albemarle County. Erica, are you there?
Yes, thank you. I think I'm still where Lisa is, where I would like to wait and see. I think there is information that will be filled in once the students filter back into town. Since Albemarle interacts very heavily with the University in Charlottesville, I expect that outcome to be what was predicted in some fashion. Also, the Albemarle County schools have also postponed in-person classes for at least 9 weeks. So I think using the schools as a gauge is probably a good tool for us moving forward.
Thank you. Wendy Craig is from Louisa. Wendy?
Yes, I had a couple responses. Listening to everyone, in concept and theory, I agree with the reopening, but I'm with more along the lines of Jim as a wait and see kind of attitude, because Louisa has had positive tests from the regarding students and teachers in the schools. The latest one was just on Thursday at the middle school. So I'm not sure. They say that there hasn't been any transferal, but I'm not a scientist. I don't know how long it would take to discover if in fact there was, if what they did was not correct. But I think just in that week's time, I have several friends who are still teaching there, and they are quite nervous. But I would, again, postpone and with a kind of wait and see. But I did talk with the librarian and staff in Louisa. They're ready to go. They feel that the safety, the PPE and all is there. One thing is, though, they're very stressed out because of the, and this is, again, peculiar to Louisa. And I think it's important to remember that everybody has their own little, in the regional libraries, we have instances or situations that require maybe something different. In this case, it's purely technical, and David knows this, dealing with the phone service there. They only had one phone, then that didn't work, and then the answering machine didn't work, and even just doing curbside, you couldn't attend to the business and get the books out to people as quickly as they would like, or as I should say, less stressfully, because there would be people calling. You could only answer the phone, obviously. The people couldn't leave a message, so the phone situation made it a little bit more difficult to just to operate smoothly. That's one concern, and the other again is just in the staffing. And this again is particular to this branch. And in the future, having the need for if we want to have the same hours and have the 3 people on duty for the in-service and curbside, which it would take, it would be a lot easier in scheduling because there's a full-time employee who needs vacation coming up. And it would just be easier to schedule if the hours were consistent. So, and perhaps not the evening hours, because that kind of throws a wrench in the scheduling. And so if we do open, I would suggest that we do everything we can short term, because hopefully we all think this is going to be short term. I hope. I mean, that's our wish, I should say. And anything we can do to accommodate the staff and keep the morale high and make things as easy as possible, I think we need to do. But I'm still a little bit on the fence of opening quickly till we do see what happens in the next couple weeks of school. It's very frightening.
Thank you, Wendy. Thomas Unsworth is from Albemarle.
Thank you. Well, just listening to all of the comments here is very interesting. I think a plan that consults with local jurisdictions makes a lot of sense in allowing them to dictate some of the speed with which they move forward. But hearing the abundance of caution from the board today, I wonder if the best course forward for us doesn't look something like expressing hope that we can move forward with this plan in a month's time, and using that month to consult with these jurisdictions, gather that information, and allow the board sort of one more up-down vote at that time. Again, understanding that, as Jim said, what the answer you get tomorrow is not necessarily the answer you're going to get in a week's time. I think that might allow us a little bit more time to collect some information and let people gauge where they are once the schools reopen, which I hear a lot of people expressing their concern about. So I would just put that idea forward and see what people think.
Thank you. And I'm Marcy McDuffie. I'm from Nelson County. Unlike the other 2 outlying jurisdictions, Nelson has gone completely with virtual education for the first 9 weeks. Our students went back today to their computers. So by the time we meet in September, they will have been in school for a month. We have limited resources in the county that make it particularly critical for us, I think, to consider opening at least on a limited basis. And despite the fact that there's uncertainty, I am sure that the uncertainty will continue. We're not going to have a clear picture of anything in 2 to 4 weeks. This is going to be an evolving story, and I think that we need to try to step up and we need to try to meet the needs as best we can in the communities. If that's expanded curbside hours, I think that's a wonderful thing, and I know it's been helpful here. But I think there also are some folks who, particularly in the outlying counties, and also outlying in Albemarle County, are really limited in what they have available to them in terms of communication with the rest of the world. And for those folks, for the homeschoolers who might need to have some extra materials that they can look for the kids, and for the students who need extra resources, I think it's important for us to allow the library staff in consultation with the jurisdictions to make decisions on a case-by-case, branch-by-branch basis about what services we can offer. If you look around our region, you'll see that other library systems have basically been doing that. They will open one branch out of a 3-branch system to make sure that there are some things available. They have made all sorts of creative ways of trying to make services accessible to people who otherwise don't have access to them. And I think that given the care with which David and the library staff have faced this issue all along, I think we can trust them to have good, clear discussions, as clear as anything can be, with the jurisdictions, and to make decisions based on opening without necessarily having the board to have to come back together and say, yes, you can all open now, or no, you can't open now. But to do it on a case-by-case basis with ongoing discussions, recognizing that things may change in 2 weeks or 4 weeks or a couple of months, that make us go either forward or backward in terms of what services we're able to provide safely. I just think we can put a lot of trust in our staff to make good decisions in conjunction with the jurisdictions. And I would hope that we might be able to give them the opportunity to do that. Wendy? Wendy, did you have something you wanted to say?
No, I'm sorry. That was my
Marcia,
cell phone.
Click on the phone.
Marcia, if I could,
Yes, Jim.
I'm trying to follow this along as best I can, and that's sometimes hard for me, but it appears that the only 2 systems that are opening with any attendance, at least for the first quarter, would be Greene and Louisa.
Yes.
That puts us in a lot different position. Now, if the board today should vote to go to this, okay, then where will the preponderance of decision-making be based? Will it be based with our county administrator, with the head librarian, or with whom? I mean, I understand if we move forward as a board, that it's up to each corresponding county, each corresponding part of the library, but who is going to make that decision? I might trust Jenny Reese implicitly. I don't know that I trust our board of supervisors at all, much less our county administrators. And so there's, to me, I don't want this left haphazardly, okay? Does that make some sense, Marcia? I see you smiling, but you know, I don't want that decision made by
Yes,
some of the people that may make it.
This has not been a haphazard process from start to finish as far as the library staff is concerned.
Yeah, I trust you and I trust David. I don't know that I trust everyone else. I'm talking locally in Greene.
I understand. David, do you have feelings about what would be the most helpful to you and the staff?
Well, I think that what we would be talking about is basically, as I mentioned before, reaching out to our counties, to our jurisdiction, all of whom are dealing with COVID response for all of their buildings, for all of their schools. This has been the only thing on their plates basically for months now. And make sure, basically in my mind, we're looking to make sure that they don't have a problem with the library's Tier 3 plans. Now, they were all ready to open when we were talking about Tier 3 opening at a 50% capacity, when we were talking about opening the doors and letting in up to 50% of our capacity. So I think they would turn this around and say, look, you know, we are trusting JMRL to make the best decisions here and to provide the best service. We're paying a premium price to get the service for our communities, and we're asking you to manage it because they've handed that over to this board and to myself in order to do that. So I think, Jim, you know, the care that's going to happen is going to happen on Ginny's staff, on myself, on the regional library system. It's up to us. It's our prerogative to make sure that this is safe and that we are keeping our patrons safe and that we are keeping our staff safe. We have great partnerships. So in Greene County, we can easily reach out to the county and they will help us in any way that they can in order to make that. They do own the building. They will make sure that the building is ready. You know, their facilities folks have already been over cleaning. You know, they have their own elevated standards for that. But ultimately, I believe that each jurisdiction would come back to us and say, if you say we're ready, then we're ready.
So it would fall back to you and to Ginny's staff.
Yes, I would think so. I don't know. You know, we would have to have that conversation.
Yeah, I don't want it left in the hands of the local administrator. I really don't.
Well, you know, this again, it's their building and they're contracting with JMRL for this service. So I think that it's important that we don't make a decision that's going to impact that county without consulting them.
Well, yeah, I agree. They should be consulted. They should be a key player in this, but I don't want it left to them. If that makes any sense, David.
And I think what David is saying to all of us is that it's the decision of the library whether or not to open.
Okay.
It is not the decision of the jurisdictions. On the other hand, the jurisdictions could quite clearly say, we do not want you to open, in which case they understand that they are paying for a service here that we are providing to the best of our ability, but that it does not include everything that we might be able to provide. So I think that what I'm hearing anyway is that the jurisdictions could interdict this and make it not happen. But otherwise, David and the staff would be the ones who would choose.
And does the jurisdiction also have the opportunity to say it will open when the staff isn't ready to?
No, that decision making is ours, is this board's.
Okay.
And
I just want to leave it left. I want that understood. I mean, by myself, not necessarily by them.
But David, is it not the case that as of last month, the staff already indicated that the staff is ready to move, the staff as a whole is ready to move to the Tier 3 as we identified it? I mean, that's what I thought I heard, was that you were bringing this as a proposal and telling us, hey, we're ready to do this if you all, the board, will approve. Am I characterizing that correctly?
I cannot speak for 100 staff members about their comfort level here. I know for a fact that there are a lot of staff who are very uncomfortable with any sort of public interaction during the pandemic. So I can't sit here and say honestly that all staff are gung ho about moving into Tier 3 protocols. The library staff has had ample time to provide feedback on the Tier 3 planning. This feedback has been invaluable in helping to change the plan to something that is the safest possible version of Tier 3 service. Like it's the safest possible way we could allow a person into the building that's not already library staff. So staff are prepared. You know, we have procured all the necessary items. We have made all the physical changes. We have trained, you know, we have been working up towards this all summer, basically. So I believe staff are prepared. I'm not going to say that all staff are are looking forward to moving to in-person service, but they all recognize that this is a public service, and this is the gist of what we do basically, is allow people to get into our buildings and access to our resources, and that day is coming, and that we're I think as prepared as we possibly could be for it. So as Marcy said, we're seeing our neighbors, like Stanton is going to open on September 2nd, but it's not a consensus thing across the state. There are different reactions. Marcy, Lisa's hand is up.
Do we have a plan? Oh,
Lisa, did you have a comment? Yes, Lisa.
I did, thank you. I wanted to just ask two questions. One, what is the protocol for us to allow jurisdictions or allow different libraries in the system, for Louisa and Green, for example, to make their own choice about what they would want to do? Could we say something like, okay, so for the jurisdictions that are more outlying, that where the schools are open in person, where they clearly feel like maybe they have things under control and want to open in person, that's fine for them. But for the other, you know, for the larger ones or the ones who are just doing online only instruction, I'm confused by that. I'm also thinking about how I'm actually feeling quite sad that we're basically using our children as guinea pigs to see what happens to them, and then we'll decide what we do. And that makes me feel uncomfortable, but I guess that's just a diagnostic that we have. I'm wondering about, like, I know sometimes when we have closures, we attach those closures to either what the school division is doing or what that division's county office building, or if the county office building is open, then the school is open, or if that building is closed, then the school is closed. I'm wondering if there's a way to set up a related protocol and using that as an index for our decision making. And then the third question was, I know this is probably too big a question for anyone to answer, but David might take a stab at it. For those jurisdictions who have been offered around the state, who have been offering in-person service, have they noticed any kind of COVID cases as a result of what they've been doing in person for those library systems that have been doing in-person services during this time?
Let me go backwards because that's the freshest one on my mind. So I have not heard any reports of any libraries having to close. That's not true. I read something about one branch in the Eastern Shore area, in the North Tidewater area, I'm sorry, that closed for cleaning because somebody had a positive test. I can't, off the top of my head, I can't remember that, I'm sorry. I know in Richmond, they moved back to curbside service because they had a situation where a staff member had contact of a contact, so a staff member came in contact with somebody. So out of an abundance of caution, they had to pull that person, and then they had to quarantine some other staff, which effectively shut down the branch. That is a concern. That's a very real concern for staffing levels, especially around JMRL when, we have branches that have small amounts of staff basically. So if there were a situation that triggered JMRL's tier 3 protocols, we would have to stop service there. I will make the point though that is also the case in tier 4 curbside, and that all along I have been much more concerned about that scenario, about staff on staff contact, because that's where our staff are spending the majority of their time. That's when it's easy for 6 feet to become 5 feet to become 4 feet just because of a comfort level when you see somebody on a regular basis. I'm much more concerned about that transmission than I am about tier 3, this concierge service. When you have somebody come in, staff are going to be very aware that this is I'm not going to say a stranger because these are their patrons that they know and that they love and that they serve, but this is someone from the outside that they haven't seen for a long time coming in. I think that they're going to be much more mindful of our protocols in that situation than they are when it's somebody that they see on a weekly basis. So I don't have data. I can ask around the state to see if there have been other cases, but I have not seen anything on the news or heard anything except for that one case, which I can't remember the gist of. For your other question about emergency closing, so we do have a policy that the policy committee just briefly was discussing a little bit, because it was not designed for a 3-month closure. It was designed for a snow day. But that policy states that generally in cases of bad weather, the library director or designee will use county office buildings as a guide. For Charlottesville area libraries, the Albemarle County office building will be the guide. For libraries in Greene, Louisa, and Nelson, county offices in Standardsville, Louisa, and Livingston, respectively, will be used as guides. So at this point, most of those county office buildings are offering some sort of limited appointment service. The most strict has been Albemarle County, which has no walk-up service available at all, but they still are allowing some appointment services within the building for various different tasks if somebody needed to come in and pay something or something that had to be done physically, basically. Most of our jurisdictional county office buildings are offering some form of that where you contact them. It will either be lobby service or you can come into the main area there and transact your business or go to the department that you need to in order to handle things. Almost all of those have been cases where there's money that needs to change hands. Now they're all offering services still out in the community. I mean, Carla can tell you about the visitor center, which is open on a limited basis, and that's a department per se of Albemarle County. So it's not as cut and dried as it is for snow when it's like nobody's here or everybody's here. People are at work, you know, they're allowing some limited appointment service, and that's basically the model that we're talking about for tier 3. I think there was one more question in there that I forgot.
I think it was about like, no, I think you answered it because you told me it was connected to the county buildings, not to the school. So that's all very helpful. I just want to just say one last thing. I think that this is incredibly a difficult question for the library because the library has a firm commitment to public service. And to balance public service and public health, I think that is it's just incredibly difficult because it seems even like to call it concierge service goes against the grounds of the public, right? Like, you know, that you have to have this fancy dancy word you have to look up in the dictionary if you don't know what a concierge is, right? Like, that's not what a public library is supposed to be. At the same time, we just have to, I don't know, I want to acknowledge that I know that this is hard and that this goes against every fiber of what someone who is so devoted to public service. When you become suspicious of the public because they have there's a virus rampaging through the public. And so I want to acknowledge that it's really difficult and that we want to remain committed to the mission of this entire endeavor and what it means for our democracy. It really is meaningful. I love the libraries. Libraries have saved many people. But I don't want to be the library to also endanger people because we're so focused on one thing that it makes it difficult to see the other.
Are there any other comments?
I think Wendy's hand is up.
I had a question, and that was aside from assessing any kind of health threat, would we be looking at numbers and making an assessment in a specific amount of time as to how much use or how many patrons came when we opened to see if just to get either affirm our decision or I don't know, kind of. I'm most concerned with students and adults in Louisa who need internet service. An hour by appointment is, although it's wonderful and it's precisely set up, I wonder how many people can, who really need it, can make that adjustment because they're coming there because they don't have the internet, so they'll be calling, and then we're back to the telephone. But I would like us, if we open for the limited services, that we, like always, try to keep very good track of the number of patrons and what they're using. So if we have to cut back, we'll have a better idea of where to put our resources. If we go forward, we'll know where to put our resources in that case if we open up. If there's overload of interest in computer use, say, or what have you. I'd like to see, and I'm sure we'll do that, but.
David?
Yeah, I was going to respond by saying I think that was the plan all along, that this we would, as best as we could, the original tier 3 proposal was every branch, same schedule for 2 weeks, collect exactly the sort of data that you're talking about, Wendy, and then adjust locally as needed, which is something that we've always done. None of our branches have the same schedule because they're all scheduled to meet the needs of their staffing and their communities.
Okay.
So yes, we would collect every bit of data that we could. We also, the plan is to continue to offer contactless service at each location during tier 3. I mean, I don't see that going away anytime soon. That
Right.
there are plenty of people who that's the only interaction.
Okay.
And I think we're going to find that that's the only interaction a lot of people want at
That's
this.
what at Lisa's question about the peers around the state. That's what I'm hearing a lot.
And that'd be, yeah,
So I don't think we'll be able
and
to.
that
put
would be
in terms of
interesting to,
service anytime soon.
right, but we have to be able to do both of them at once efficiently. Yeah, that's with the number of staff that we have. That's my concern. Okay. Yeah, I don't know. I know people want it to be open, but.
Are there any other comments, questions? Is there anyone who's comfortable making a motion for us to consider in terms of opening or not at tier 3 level? Nobody's comfortable making a motion?
Well, it's still, I mean, I definitely would like to, keep moving the ball forward in terms of, trying to understand what the decision we're making and how to make that decision. I mean, that's what I hear we're all struggling with. And so today's theme, I think, is, well, can we involve local jurisdictions in that decision process? And how could that play in? And then can we sort of think about moving to a mode where it's not a system-wide tier 3, but it's staggered based on the circumstances in each jurisdiction. So I do think, I mean, those are the elements I heard today that are kind of new, perhaps. So I think we should find a way to come to some consensus, at least on those elements. At a minimum, it seems to me that we should have that. At a minimum, I think we should ask David and possibly 1 or 2 trustees at the same time to have that start having that conversation and gather that feedback and then report back in a month, which is sort of I think one of the things that Thomas put on the table. To me, it's either do that or establish some sort of trigger, whether it's the county building and say today that we would fall in line with whatever that trigger might be. To me, those would be the 2 possible motions that could be put forward based on what I've heard. So does that help frame things for anyone?
Well, it would be possible for us to take consecutive motions.
Right.
And consider them. I think that David needs to know about the level of support on the board for whatever plan is going to go forward. And again, I think we're all assuming that this is going to be something that's going to be revisited every couple of weeks, possibly at least every month for the foreseeable future. Mike, did you have something?
I think he's frozen.
Yeah. I would say, Marcia, if I could, if we're talking about moving forward to level 3 as a single entity, I don't know that I could support that. But if we're saying we could move forward on the county option, I'm more likely to support that. Does that help any?
It does help. It would also help if you could put it in the form of a motion.
Thank you, Marcia. I love you too. Okay.
Carla's hand is up, Marcy.
Carla? I'm sorry, I can't tell when your hand's up.
That's cool. That's fine. So I just wanted to reiterate that we have already agreed to the tier 3 plan, right? That we're agreed to the phase 3 plan. And now all we need to agree to is essentially the timing of it And David's asking us to do it so that he can reach out to each locality and discuss with them, either their support or concerns about this appointment, appointment only services. And so I think I can make a motion. My motion would be that the board supports moving forward with the Tier 3 plan on a locality by locality basis. Is that not all we need?
At the discretion of the library director and the local jurisdictions, do you want to add those?
I would say instead of at the discretion of the locality, I would say after discussions with the locality.
At the discretion of the library director?
Yeah.
After discussion with the localities.
And by locality, I think we are talking about county executives.
I'm losing you, Carla.
Sorry. When we're talking about the locality, we're talking about county executives.
True.
Okay.
Well, and city executives.
Right. Except that in the city, that because the city libraries are shared with the county, we would discuss it with the city, but we'd also have to discuss it with the county. Those facilities are all shared.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Jim, did you have one more comment? And then I think Lisa had something she wanted to say.
Real quickly, I don't know if it's my system or what, but I have a real difficult time following Carla. And so if you could summarize exactly what was said, because it's to me, it's coming across where it's hard for me to understand. It may be me, but I think it's.
No, I think it's at Carla's end, and I will try. Lisa, did you
write it in the chat? Can we ask Carla to write her comments in the chat, and that way everyone could see them? Because I'm having a little delay or echo, because that's trouble hearing.
Carla, could you do that? Could you chat your motion? I think that will actually be the most helpful. Good suggestion.
I was just going to also ask, I think, is there a way to, maybe it might require different motions like you were saying earlier, Marcia, but I personally feel badly. I personally don't want to vote for Charlottesville to do that. I feel like since Charlottesville schools are closed, it's not closed, but whatever. But I want to support the smaller jurisdictions who feel more ready. If Louisa feels ready, if Greene feels ready, if Nelson feels ready, and that's coming from your comments, Marcy, it's coming from Jim, it's coming from Wendy, people who are there, and it's coming from the folks who are working in those branches. I don't want to stop that, but I think that's a very different thing than opening up the downtown branch in Charlottesville, which I personally would not want to vote for. I would not vote for that personally. I would not vote for that as a Charlottesville person, because that to me feels dangerous. That's just where I am at the moment.
If a motion would just simply say it would be left to each community, then that would take Charlottesville out of the quotient, I believe, Lisa, because that would be Charlottesville's decision. And I think that's maybe, David, where you're trying to get to with this anyway, where we leave it to the locality and the library to decide.
Yeah, so what I'm asking for is the option to work with our localities in order to open our buildings in Tier 3. If you wanted to get more specific about which localities we're talking about, then I think that was a question from Lisa a little while ago. That's this board's prerogative. If we're only talking here about Greene, Louisa, and Nelson, then I think that we could take a motion for that and then revisit the Charlottesville Albemarle. I think Mike brings up a good point about Albemarle. In Scottsville, broadband is a huge problem. So Scottsville is very different from Northside, serves a very different community, has very different needs. So I think that that might be a potential solution for you all to name some branches to basically allow me to go work with the jurisdictions to make sure that they're on board with a tier 3 reopening of specific branches, and then revisit the other ones. Augusta has done that. They have 3 of their branches open in smaller communities, not the main. I can't remember which ones they are now, but not all of their branches are open basically.
Yep. I mean, if it were today, I'd be hesitant about green opening to tier 3, especially considering the issues we have with their entrance stores and such. But I'd like the option where it could be revisited by the county and through your office, David, where it maybe in 2 weeks' time, it may be more feasible, or 3 weeks' time, or whatever. But so if that gives us that option, I'd be okay with that. Okay.
Let me read what Carla has
Please.
suggested and see what people's responses to that are. The board supports moving to tier 3 emergency service, and you may want to change the wording of that, on a locality by locality basis at the discretion of the library director after consultation with each county executive. And I would probably rephrase that to the local administrative units.
Administrative.
Wendy?
I'm thinking that sounds better to me, but also I would like to predicate that on making sure that the Louisa Library phone system is enhanced before that happens. And David, I know that we've done this with Christian previously on trying to get the phone system differentiated and in better working order. And maybe that could be part of your discussion with them, if you would.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
It does. The discussions that we've had with the county before have been about moving on to the county's phone system, which is the setup that's at Green.
Right.
And in those discussions, it's been pretty apparent that the county doesn't really think that that's a cost-effective way to move forward. So JMRL did budget money this year for a new phone system. Of course, it wasn't an emergency until COVID happened, basically. The problem there was that the answering machine, it was a very old system that relied on a physical answering machine that was broken. So we need a new system that has voicemail in it. And Josh is already working with local providers out there to get it. Having worked with local phone providers before, I have a feeling that we might have a cure for COVID before there's a solution in place there. I'm being facetious. It's not. I don't think necessarily. I think we can come up with some other solutions that might involve, like right now they're using a cell phone that's forwarding numbers. We can come up with some temporary solutions that would involve more of those. So it wouldn't be necessarily fixing it.
Okay, I would.
But I would suggest, could we? Go ahead, Wendy.
I would just like to make sure that some solution is reached before it happens in Louisa. I was just hoping maybe that could be a bargaining chip for the county taking the phone service. that is now necessary. It is an emergency, and what they could get by with before, they really can't afford to now. And I don't know, that I was just thinking.
I guess I would just suggest, what I'm hearing is Louisa we have a COVID emergency issue, and then separately Louisa might have an operational issue, which would normally be, under the purview of the director anyway. So if we could, if we choose, and if the motion as it's kind of shaping up passes, and the motion only references COVID, and in conjunction with local authorities, the director and Louisa decide that the COVID restriction is removed, then he's just in the normal operating range of dealing with the operational. It seems to me that doesn't need to be part of the of a COVID related motion, just because it would just put him back to square two where he's at business as usual.
No, I am not saying it needs to be included in any kind of motion. I'm just saying I want David to, and I know he's aware that that's not the correct word, but that has to be a solution before,
Thank you.
as part of his
I think that
his
this topic is
decision.
clear.
Okay.
Wendy? I
Yeah.
think this topic is clear, and it's definitely on David's radar. And as has been pointed out by Mike, I think it doesn't really have anything particularly relevant to the motion about considering COVID-related opening.
Right.
So if we could deal with the COVID-related opening, there is some discussion. Lisa has suggested that we limit possible openings to Green, Louisa, and Nelson. I would prefer that we have a broader motion to begin with. If that does not pass, then we can certainly consider a more limited motion. But I think that we need to consider giving David and the county and city administrators as much freedom as we can to do the appropriate thing for each local branch with regard to service. So I would propose that we pretty much take the motion that was presented by Carla. And if you all look in chat, you'll be able to see that motion at the very beginning of the current chat.
I do feel that we need to reread it from start to finish.
All right.
I mean, Carla, would you, I think Marcy had just attempted to tweak a little bit of the language. So the word Tier 3 emergency service might have a different definition. In county executive, I think the suggestion was to replace that with a broader term for administrative units. Carla, would you like to reattempt that, or would you be willing for Marcy to give it an attempt from start to finish with those, small redefinitions?
Yeah, that's fine. I guess we should, I thought that this was considered emergency service. So I think we should get the correct word for what it is that we're describing.
I would propose that we use limited service or scheduled service, if that would be something that would be acceptable to you, Carla.
What does it actually say that we passed in the July meeting?
It's the whole Tier 3 proposal that we're talking about. So you've specified Tier 3.
But it does have a title.
I beg your pardon, Wendy?
It does have a title. It does have a title.
David, do you have a title for this service?
For JMRL's service?
Yes.
Yes, it is our Tier 3 regional guidelines. It's Tier 3 of JMRL's COVID response plan.
Well, then let's
COVID response plan.
Moving to the Tier 3 response
COVID response.
on a locality by locality basis at the discretion of the library director after consultation with each local jurisdiction. How would that, is that satisfactory, Carla?
I'm still worried about the local jurisdiction.
Why are you worried about local jurisdictions?
Because Jim brought that up, that we should say what the local jurisdiction is. So we would say each executive administration.
All right, each executive, what was the last word? You're dropping out about every other word, Carla.
Administration, she said. Local, county, executive administration is what she said.
Is that, will that suit?
Yeah, that's fine.
All right. We have a motion on the floor. I'll take a roll call vote on this motion. Jim West,
Yes.
Lisa Wolfork,
No.
Mike Powers,
Yes.
Carla Mullen,
Yes.
Erica Younglove,
No.
Wendy Craig,
Ay, ay, ay.
was that a yes?
Yes,
Thomas Unsworth?
yes.
Yes, thank you. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you very much. I believe this motion passes. This has been very difficult. It will continue to be difficult. This is something that we're going to be dealing with on a frequent basis for the foreseeable future. And I really appreciate all the thoughtfulness that the board members have put on this issue and the support that you've given to the library staff and to David, implicit in all of the discussions that have been going forward. The next order of business is a policy committee report. The first policy committee meeting since our shutdown was held today. And Mike will tell you the schedule for the year and bring up one policy for your approval.
Okay, the policy committee meets every 2 months, and usually before the regularly scheduled board meeting for that month. So we did meet today, and today was mostly a planning meeting or sort of an organizational meeting to sort of get on the table a roadmap for really the next, at different levels of details for the next 3 months, 6 months, and even up to 18 months. We mentioned some topics. So the bread and butter of policy committee is the required review of policies that are reviewed currently on a 10-year schedule. So we have a required review of certain policies that are up for review. Today we did discuss and make some recommendations for the Friends of the Library policy. In October, we have on the table or on the schedule the policy 1.6, unsolicited gifts of non-library materials, and policy 4.33, printing and copying. So those will be part, before the October board meeting, those will be part of the handout packet. And those are things that the policy committee will be discussing at that meeting. So if you have thoughts about those or input, that's sort of a heads up on that timing. Aside from, and then we have identified a few other for December that are sort of also up for review. In addition to working on the individual policies for review, we put on the table that we'd like to make some sort of longer term improvements as time permits. And those include a sort of a reorganization of the entire manual, not to really include rewriting of policies, but sort of a bunch of renumbering and reorganizing to make it the sections that are pertain to library governance. It's kind of separate and distinct from the policies that pertain to using the libraries. That would be sort of day-to-day relevance for patrons. And then there are also some employee-only policies that we would like to work towards separating into a separate employee manual because those they sort of naturally apply to sort of different stakeholders than those first two categories. So this idea of having a reorganization of the manual overall would sort of take place in the time frame of the first half of 2021. The idea of separating out and moving to a dedicated employee manual would happen sort of during the second half or by the end of 2021. David and I are going to kind of start that process by meeting with the City of Charlottesville HR contact, and you know, there we've currently we utilize the City of Charlottesville policy manual as our City of Charlottesville employee policy manual as the JMRL policy manual, but as the JMRL employee policy manual. But the City of Charlottesville employee policy manual also references it's very broad, and it references the idea of specific department manuals within Charlottesville. So the registrar or elections office might have a sort of a different employee policy than the police department. And we think that the library sort of naturally falls into that, would fall into analogously to that sort of category. So Dave and I, we're going to first sort of start by touching base with the city of Charlottesville, understanding their plans for a revised city of Charlottesville employee policy manual, which I understand has been in the works for some time, and then just sort of understand what their perspective would be about the idea of a departmental type employee manual for the library. And the goal of all of that is to put the library on just solid footing in terms of general HR principles. We have 150 employees. I think it would be rare for a small business of even 15 employees to not have a detailed policy manual to make sure that principles are spelled out in advance so that you're not managing when an issue comes up, you're managing the principles that you've kind of agreed on in advance rather than the specifics of whatever happened. It's just an idea. It's just a prudent measure that I think is standard HR practice. So that's the big picture as far as the roadmap. I'll ask for any comments or questions before we look at the specific policy that we looked at today.
Does anyone have any questions for Mike?
Okay, then we David, perhaps you can screen share the red line of the policy we looked at today. We're sort of reading this or presenting it today. Our usual procedures that we present a policy changes, and then at the following meeting, there's an opportunity for public comment, and then at the following meeting, there would be a vote. So we're not voting on anything today, but just introducing these changes as something to look at between now and the next meeting. Okay, so Friends of the Library, Marcy, do you think I should read the whole thing or just the red lines or just let people read it on the screen? What do you think is appropriate?
If everyone's comfortable just reading it on the screen, we'll take about a minute. And you can see where changes have been made, suggestions for changes have been made to the policy.
I can say while people are reading that there's no real new definitions here. It was really just to a little bit of wordsmithing in terms of the flow and also some definitions. I think I could characterize this as not
substantive.
No new concepts have been introduced here. Okay, if people have questions or comments on what you're seeing, we can talk about them now. Otherwise, this will come back at the next meeting for a vote. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thanks, Mike. The next thing that we have on the schedule is the fiscal year 21 schedule of library closings. You all should have received the 3 separate proposals as alternatives in the packet. I hope you've taken a look at it, but I'll leave it to David.
Okay, thanks, Marcy. I'm going to share my screen again, so stick with me. I need Dramamine for this, but. So basically, there were 3 separate proposals in your packet for consideration. The goal here is to add a closed paid holiday in fiscal year 21 for Juneteenth, is June 19th, 2021. So there are 3 different options available for you all, and then there, you all of course can set the schedule as you like. So there are whatever else you would need to look at. The first one includes adding a 13th holiday. So this was an entirely new holiday. Currently we have 12 paid holidays for staff. So it's just adding a new closed day for the library. So the only change there is adding June 19th and then changing this 12 to 13, which I think was an omission in last month's packet. The second option includes removing President's Day in the spring and replacing that with Juneteenth. And the third option presented was removing Veterans Day and replacing it with Juneteenth. after discussing this a bit with Marcy, there is another option that's there. This 3 days at Christmas has been very nice for staff. Staff have really appreciated that. I myself have personally really appreciated that. It's one of the quietest times of the year for the library and regular service. But that third day after Christmas, we've only celebrated for the last 2 years. That's something that the board could consider that day for Juneteenth as well.
So the proposals are to add a holiday with Juneteenth, to remove the President's Day holiday from the library schedule, or to remove the Veterans Day from the library schedule of holidays, paid holidays. David has also brought up the question of removing one of the 3 holidays that we had given over the Christmas period. How would you like to deal with this? Does anyone have any burning questions or comments, or shall I go around and see one by one? Hi, Lisa.
Hi. What would happen if we just added Juneteenth, just adding it without having to take anything away? I'm totally down to take away President's Day. Do not take away the day after Christmas, my goodness. So like, could we just add it? And then that's just a budgetary thing we'd have to absorb. Like what would be the disadvantage to just going from 12 holidays to 13?
Well, it is just a budget thing that we have to absorb. And actually, David and Jerry went through and did some calculations. If we are fully staffed at the time of the holiday, then that's 768 hours of work that are not being done.
Okay.
And I have real reservations, frankly, myself, about pulling that many hours out of our library system, in particular this year when I'm worried that for reasons of illness and quarantine, we may in fact be running short-staffed quite frequently. But I think that's something that the board needs to consider. As Lisa pointed out, this is a financial issue, but it's also a workload and time issue and a scheduling issue, especially for the branches with smaller numbers of staff. I'm just going to go around and see whether if you don't have any comments or questions, it's perfectly fine, but I'd like to see if we get everybody involved here. Jim, do you have any questions, concerns, comments about this issue?
I'm in sort of a tough spot. President's Day, I was a history teacher for years. I'm a veteran, and I believe our veterans need more support, not less support. And I would be opposed to eliminating Veterans Day completely. That's and so I guess if I were going to jettison one of the 2, then goodbye, Mr. Lincoln and Mr. Washington and the rest of them. But that's an opinion.
Mike?
So you said we'd be pulling, if we kept, if we simply added one holiday, we'd be in effect pulling 768 hours. But isn't it the case, it seems to me that it's more that we're just dropping a day of service. Aren't these hours already paid, and it's just simply the case that we're not providing an open facility on that day? Help me understand what if I'm thinking about that wrong.
It would be definitely that the facilities would be closed, but there are a lot of things that go on in the background in every hour that we're working that don't have anything to do with contact with the public, with checking out books, with helping with computers and that sort of thing, that would not be happening on those days, that make the library run. And the more we cut away the things that make the library run under the surface, the paddling of the duck under the water, I think the tougher it's going to be.
So that point is taken, but is there actually a financial delta here, or is it really just this workload delta?
I think it's a workload delta.
Okay.
They're obviously going to be paid for this day, whether they work it or not, if we give them a holiday.
And are we somehow paying when there is a holiday, are you somehow paying staff that would not otherwise have been scheduled that day? Is that a financial consideration? Or?
Yes. Staff that were not scheduled to work get to take this as comp time, basically, which is fair.
And I'm just not as, the personnel stuff is some of this, what I'm least kind of familiar with. When it's comp time, are they trading that for other hours that they would otherwise?
Correct.
So again, it's not an increase of that we're funding additional hours somehow. It's just that those hours are being, the service or the workload is being shifted from one spot to the other. David is nodding.
Sort of.
Yeah.
It's being compressed. Can we put it that way?
Right.
The workload is being compressed into the hours that the library is actually open.
So, okay, so I agree with that. But again, the bottom dollar line, the dollar line has not changed anywhere.
The dollar line is not changed.
Okay. So based on this understanding, are we stating we're stating our opinions. So I would prefer proposal 1 where we're adding a holiday.
Lisa?
Unmute.
I would like to add a holiday. Just add Juneteenth as a holiday.
Carla?
I agree.
Erica?
I'd like to add a holiday.
Wendy?
I would love to say just add a holiday, but I just saw the Louisa supervisors debate this same question at their meeting last week. And with the proposal of adding June 19th, it was tabled until next month because they didn't want to give an extra holiday to the employees in the county. So I could, and they didn't want to eliminate any of the current holidays. So I would personally be in favor, but I can just see this as another wedge in our dealings with the county. I'm all in favor of adding it, but I'll just give you some background on Louisa. So it doesn't look promising to me that they're going to add a day.
Thanks, Wendy. Thomas, do you have any
But
questions?
I say
Thomas?
I would be all in favor of adding the holiday, but if there become other political concerns that, get involved, then I think some of these other options, either, as we said, removing President's Day, or nobody else has brought it up, but I would be fine with switching the day after Christmas. Did I hear correctly that that's only been a holiday that's been able to be used once in the last couple of years? Regardless, I'd be happy to add the holiday if that can pass without any other problems.
Lisa?
I was going to ask, if the library decides to give it as a holiday to library employees, does it really matter if Louisa, for example, doesn't want to celebrate Juneteenth? Like if we said this is a holiday, this is something that we believe in as an entity, it's something that our employees should be celebrating or have time off for, would that be I guess I'm trying to understand Wendy's feedback, saying that she would be supportive of it, but she also knows that that's going to be a wedge issue because Louisa doesn't want to add a holiday. I'm just trying to understand.
Wendy?
right, and it's a difficult situation, and I'm not I'm just saying that in our dealings with the Board of Supervisors, I just don't know. I can see them saying, well, you got an extra day, and the county doesn't do that when we're talking about pay and we're talking about increases and whatnot. I just see that as a future point. I'm not seeing it so much as the actual day itself, though politics does play a part. But that's not the impression I meant to give. If I did, I'm thinking really, yeah.
Wendy, I think David has a comment that he'd like to make.
Well, the only comment I was going to make is that for me, it's about Marcy's point about service. That's the real discussion. It's a day less library service for the community. So figuring out whether or not, you know, that's something that can be maneuvered. I will say that Wendy and Louisa, they in fiscal year 20 and fiscal year 19 did have 13 paid holidays. So this would put the library at where it is currently. The library currently has 12, Louisa has 13.
Okay.
Just mentioning it.
Okay.
Thank you, David.
Okay. No, it's good to know. I did not know that. Thank you. Thank you. Then I say add it or remove President's Day.
Do I have a motion?
Did Erica get a chance to weigh in? I'm sorry, I wasn't sure.
I believe you did, Erica, didn't you?
Yes, I support adding a holiday. More time off for staff is good.
Do I have a motion?
I move that we adopt the 2021 schedule of library closings expressed by proposal number 1, which is to add June 19th, 2021 as a library holiday, a staff paid holiday.
I'll go around for votes. Jim?
Yes.
Mike?
Yes.
Lisa?
Yes.
Carla?
Yes.
Erica?
Yes.
Wendy?
Yes.
Thomas?
Yes.
The motion passes. Thank you very much. Now we-
Marcy,
Yes, Mike?
while we're on the subject of motions, just a procedural thing. When you called the roll for the previous motion about, did you call yourself?
I'm not sure I did, but I voted yes.
Okay, I just think we
Thank
should
you.
have that in the record. Thank you.
I was going to ask the same question.
Thank you. I didn't feel a need to vote yes on this because it obviously passed. Now David has the library director's report.
Thank you. I'll be brief because you all are working hard today. Just a couple of things. Staff are working on information for local schools about library resources that are available for teachers and students during virtual learning. So that's including at least one planned virtual visit to some classrooms by JMRL staff at a city elementary school, which I thought was a very clever idea that a school librarian and staff members came up with. So I thought I'd mention that. I also wanted to highlight some very unique programming that is happening at Gordon Avenue. The staff there put up a story walk in the garden. So this is an exploration of a book that's in the physical garden next to the building there. You can walk through the Gordon Avenue Library garden where laminated pages from the book ABCville, which is a kid's photography book that has pictures of Charlottesville in it. They're on yard signs throughout. You can extend your experience by taking a drive through Charlottesville to see the sites there, or just walk through your home to spot your own ABCs. At any rate, it's up all this month. No registration is required. Stop by anytime. Of course, socially distance if everybody shows up at once. But I thought that was a very clever way to extend some kind of physical programming while the building was closed by the staff at Gordon Avenue. So I wanted to give them props for that. And the last piece that I have is very exciting. Thomas and I were talking about this last week, and I wonder if his mentioning of it might have helped here. JMRL is solidifying plans with UVA for a local interlibrary loan service. So this would be free of charge for JMRL's patrons. In the past, we've charged $3 for the postage that takes place. But in this case, the university's, their own delivery service would make a once a week stop at the main library, basically. Currently in Tier 4, where JMRL is not offering interlibrary loan services physically, only things that can be printed, articles, emailed, things like that. So the cost here to JMRL is the staff time, mostly from Patrick Kilmer in the reference department at the main library. But we're expecting to announce this later in this week and make it available next week. The only items that will be available are things that are at the university's collection. The university's libraries will not be open to members of the public this fall, which is a change from most years. I've always enjoyed being able to go in there and get materials, but it's going to be faculty and staff only. So this is a way for them to get their materials out into the community, and it would serve the entire JMRL. So somebody from any of the outlying branches, if they request an item that's available at UVA that JMRL doesn't have, it'll be a little slow because it has to go from UVA to Central out to the branch, but we'll be able to offer that starting hopefully next week. I'm very excited about this. It's something JMRL has been interested in for a long time. So I'm hoping that this is one of the silver linings of the COVID response, and we'll be able to keep this up after the fact. That's all I have.
Thank you very much. That's terrific news. Are there any other matters that anyone from the board would like to raise before we get to the end of the meeting?
Oh, go ahead, David.
No, go ahead. I'll follow you.
Well, I just wanted to mention that I noticed on the JMRL website that the beta site has gone live in terms of soliciting feedback from patrons or website visitors. So David, would you like us to kind of spread the word to whatever stakeholders we have or community members we know? Are you looking for us to spread that word, I guess?
That would be excellent. Thank you so much. I would really appreciate that.
Okay. And I guess I do have a second question about that, which is in one of my past lives, I was a software product manager, and it's been my experience in that role, it was the same idea. You're trying to get feedback from your stakeholders about what's going to work for them. My experience was that people were able to provide much more meaningful and targeted feedback when they had things to compare against. So if you're just showing them one thing, people just tend to say, yeah, it looks good, or, I don't know, but if you show them two things, they're able to kind of articulate, and you learn a lot more about, I like features A, B, and C of option A, and I like features X, Y, and Z of option B. Have you thought about any ways to kind of introduce that sort of concept of comparisons into the beta feedback that you're soliciting right now?
The questions that are up there, I don't think mention any particular, like, take a look at this and see. I think it's mostly meant to be a comparison to the current site. Does this work better than it does on the current site? So that's a good point. Let me talk to Catherine and Josh about that. I know we're also looking to do some targeted feedback, as well as working with a design group that helped us do some of the back-end Drupal work as well. So this is just the phase one of collecting some feedback. So I think it's broad on purpose, and we're going to start to target a little bit more. And I think that's a good suggestion for how to go about doing that.
Thanks.
Any other board comments before we go on to the agenda? David.
Yeah, I have another matter which I'm hoping we can address today, but if it needs to wait until next month, then I understand. It's basically that the Grow Nelson group has done an amazing job in a difficult circumstance of raising $500,000 to support the new building that's there. One of the main goals of that amount of money was to buy an outreach vehicle for Nelson to be able to provide better library service. Just like Louisa and Green, the Nelson Library is in the middle of the county, and of course there are service needs all throughout. So the idea is to have an outreach vehicle which can provide programming and book delivery service throughout the region, throughout Nelson County. There is enough money there to start the procurement process on this. The money is in the CACF, Nelson Memorial Library Fund. So either today or at the next meeting, I'm interested in a motion from the board to accept a grant from the Nelson Memorial Fund of the Charlottesville Albemarle Community Foundation for $100,000 to purchase an outreach vehicle for the Nelson Memorial Library.
Is the president able to make a motion?
No. That's an exciting idea.
Isn't it?
Could I have a motion
Yes.
from the board? Is that
There.
something you feel comfortable doing today?
I so move.
Thank you very
I
much.
so move.
Is there any discussion? We're very excited. Again, I will take a roll
I'm gonna
call.
have to move to now.
Jim, on this motion of giving a grant to JMRL to purchase a vehicle for the Nelson system.
Accepting a grant.
Well, since Wendy was excited and moved, I vote yes.
Mike,
Yes.
Lisa,
Yes.
Carla,
Yes.
Erica.
Yes.
Wendy,
Yes.
Thomas,
Yes.
and of course, I vote yes. We really are very excited, and I'm very proud of our county. It's an amazing job that they've done.
And you've done an amazing job yourself. Marcia.
Ah,
Fantastic job.
there are some
Thank
days.
you.
Would you like to come help share some sheep?
Yeah, no, but I'll move to Nelson and they can drive by and drop my books off.
Not that excited.
Oh, come on.
I'd like to bring up some future agenda items. I know David will have some too. We are behind on some of our routine board responsibilities. One of them is the director's evaluation, which I personally find impossible to consider doing via a Zoom meeting for reasons of privacy, security, and just plain utility. So I would like at some point in the near future to raise the issue of any of us who feel comfortable meeting together, arranging a meeting, and having other folks phone in if they feel that they can't, when the arrangements are made, that they can't participate. Whether we do this at the next meeting or not, I'll have to talk about it with David, depending on what the rest of the meeting agenda is like. But we need to get back to doing our board responsibilities. We're going to be walking into budget season very shortly. And we really need to have some effective ways of meeting that can handle these responsibilities. We also have a requirement for doing a board self-evaluation. And I'm going to ask David to send out the questionnaire over the next week. Hopefully you all will get it back and we can do a summary and we can handle that fairly efficiently. But I think that we, as a board, need to start getting back into the saddle again and taking care of business. David, other items for the agenda? Yes, Lisa.
I would like to add, and Marcia, I'm so grateful for your leadership and for your vigilance. I just want to be clear that if I feel like the board is doing work, I feel like just because I know Zoom is not ideal, Zoom is not something that I love at all, but this is just one of the realities that we are in right now. And I feel like it's a little, I think that we need to extend ourselves some grace and flexibility, that a lot of things around the world are happening through this digital format. And I don't know, I just want to kind of just be clear that somehow we're not just phoning it in or being lazy because we are conducting so much business on Zoom.
I will tell you that, yes, it has been a utilitarian response to the situation that we found ourselves in. I personally find it impossible to think about leading a meeting to evaluate the director in this format. It's something that really requires some support, somebody watching out for people who have called in and can't raise their hand, that sort of thing. I'm not sure, in fact, I'm sure I could not conduct a meeting under those circumstances. And I feel that it's unfair to David for us to leave this hanging for such a long period of time. I think there are ways that we can meet safely. And as I said, I'm sure that if there are special circumstances that people really feel that they're at risk, I'm certainly one of the people at very high risk, but I want to make sure the library keeps working as well as it can. And so I'm willing to do some things to try to make sure that that happens. But I appreciate your input, Lisa. Thank you. This has been a stress for all of us, and it will continue to be a stress. David, are there other agenda items?
There'll be the reading of the Friends of the Library policy, which you might have just mentioned. As you mentioned earlier, hopefully resuming continuing ed next month with a presentation from Angela Critics and Haley Tompkins on collection development issues in the children's room. It's also on our annual schedule to set budget objectives for fiscal year 21 based on the 5-year plan next month. So I've already done some preliminary reading of it. There are not in fiscal year 21 any major additions to the budget based on the 5-year plan, but there are some that fell off this past year because of COVID. So we should discuss those and discuss whether or not to add them into the budget request for next year.
Good. I think that's a really critical thing for us to plan to do in September. Are there any other issues that people would want to raise for this next agenda? Well, please get. Yes.
Dave, this is Wendy. Well, I'm sorry. I know we're going to look at the Friends policy, but hopefully at that time I will have been to the Friends meeting by our next board meeting, so I can give a quick update on the what they decide on the book sale.
That would be great.
Wonderful.
If you'd like it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Any other issues? Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So move.
Thank you. All in favor? Aye.
Yes.
Aye.
Anyone?
Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Thank you very much for your patience and all of your input.